Today to unbox I have this, the Beelink AP42. I'm also going to not just unbox it, but also do the full complete review in this video. So this is another Apollo Lake mini PC. The first one I checked out was the Voyo V1. Now that wasn't a bad mini PC, that was actively cooled, it had a fan in it. This time around, this one's passively cooled, so there is no fan. And it also has a built-in wireless AC on there. The only downside to this one here is you can't expand the memory like you could on the Voyo, but you can still put in an SSD. So let's get this unboxed. But just before I break the seal and have a look at what we get inside here, those are the specs here. So very similar to the Voyo V1. Apollo Lake N4200, 4GB of RAM, and we do have a 64GB eMMC, gigabit Ethernet port on there, and it does have an SD card reader, and I think it is 3 USB 3 ports. I did see on the box that it states that it's got an EU power supply, so that's great. I don't need to use one of those adapters or anything. So this one here I picked up from Banggood, and it took about 3 weeks to arrive, so quite slow because it was just via Amsterdam Post in our shipping for me. Okay, so they give us a quick user guide there that's all in English, which is great. Here is the mini PC. We get a small little VESA mount bracket, so you could put this on the back of your TV or your monitor, which is great. The power supply, EU plug, and that is rated to 12 volts, 1.5 amps. And they have included screws for the mounting, of course, an adapter there for HDMI, and then an HDMI cable itself, which is good. So you don't need to buy the cable, it's already included, and there is nothing else there in the box. So on the left of the AP42 we have an antenna made out of plastic, and you just need to angle that up, of course, to get maximum signal strength there. Vent along the side. On the back, the power button, DC in, USB 3 port, HDMI port, gigabit Ethernet port, a audio jack there, which is 3.5mm. It accepts microphones, and then a reset button. And on the right side or the front, depends on how you look at it, we have more vents, SD card reader, full-sized of course, and another 2 USB 3 ports. And then on what I would call the front of it, just a status LED there. And lastly, on the back, there are 4 solid rubber feet. Now you need to remove these feet, pry them off if you want access to the 4 screws that are behind those in order to remove the back panel and install your own SSD. So overall, the build quality feels great. It's all made out of metal apart from the wireless antenna, of course, which has to be plastic. Here I just removed the 4 screws, and prying up the rear panel, I can see that we're going to have to pull the whole motherboard out. There is a rather thick thermal pad on there, which is obviously going to be transferring some heat away onto the back panel as well, which is good to see. This motherboard is held in by 3 screws, so you've got to remove those first before we can pull out the motherboard. Now once that has been flipped over, you can proceed to install your own M.2 SATA 3 SSD. Right here I have a Transcend 240GB one, which is what I'm going to use for the review, because I do need to actually check out and see whether or not this port is going to work at full SATA 3 speeds or not. The eMMC is located here, and you can see they have used a very large heat sink there, so that should really do, hopefully, a very good job with thermals. But let's check that out now and get this powered on and go through a few things. So I've just powered it on with the default storage option in there, which is the 64GB of eMMC storage. So I just wanted to run through a few things here. Installed memory, of course, 4GB, but they have allocated some of that to the Intel 500 HD GPU. So we get 3.85 usable. Windows activation. Now I was a little worried about this because when I first powered it on and set it up, it asked me for a CD key, which isn't the norm. Normally they don't do that. So I thought that maybe in the box there was a CD key, but luckily it seems it is in the BIOS because now it's all fully activated. So you don't need to worry about that. You don't have to buy a Windows 10 Home license. Other things to point out, that the internal storage, we get 45.2GB free on first boot here. I've not installed or downloaded anything yet because I'm going to be using the SSD. So it's a Samsung CJN B4R eMMC, and I have seen these drives before. This is in fact the same one that is in the Chewy HI13 with really good performance. I think it's eMMC 5 spec, so a step up from the 4.5.1 spec drives we used to see in the old Atom Cherry Trails. Intel wireless dual band AC. I'll have benchmarks of that shortly. Very good chipset. I'm really happy with that one in other tablets and mini PCs I have tested out. And then the gigabit Ethernet port is Realtek there, of course. Alright, so I'm now running on my SSD, and I wanted to show you some benchmarks of that drive I have in there, which is a 240GB Transcend M.2 SSD. Very good speeds. That is pretty much the fastest this drive can operate at. It's not going to get any faster than that. And here is the Samsung eMMC. Very good speeds on this. This is the fastest I have seen to date with this type of eMMC, which is an eMMC 5 spec. So very good sequential reads and writes. 4K's also very good. Now the SD card slot runs at full speed, so it's a USB 3 reader. It's going through a USB 3 hub, so no problems with that. Good speeds. Here's the Antutu score, which is 121,000. It's not that much faster than the Apollo Lake Celeron M3450, which gets around 110,000. So a slight benefit there to CPU and GPU scores, but not really that much. So other benchmarks here. This is Geekbench 4. Single core score is faster than the M3450, but the multi-core score for some reason came out a little slower, which should be around 4,000. And here is the OpenCL score. Now onto the wireless performance. So that wireless AC single antenna can get reasonably good download speeds, but I'm disappointed with the upload speed here of 57 megabits per second. That should be at least over 200. Now when I plugged in my cable to the modem directly and then into the back with that Gigabit Ethernet port, I was able to get a full 300 upload and download. So there's no problems with the Ethernet on this. So if you want maximum speeds, don't use the wireless, use Ethernet. And that applies to everything really. If you want the maximum speeds, always go Ethernet. So if we have a look now at performance of 4K, I'm just going to quickly go into YouTube just to give you a quick demonstration. Now I'm going to find here a trailer that is in 4K. No, a 4K demo actually. Load that up. Just kill the sound on that so I don't have any copyright problems. Alright, so enable 4K. This is going through the wireless. And then the stats. So far no drop frames. Gonna full screen it. That is not a problem. Working fine. Really good. Looks nice. Now in regards to 4K, I have connected this up to a 4K TV. And yes, 4K works, but only 30 Hz. It doesn't output 60 Hz. We need a display port for that, which this doesn't have. So that is fine. Now Chrome performance as well. Here I have TechTablets in the background. That is good. Scrolling speed. Okay, now it's a little sluggy just then because I still have this 4K video running in the background, which is no doubt taking up a lot of CPU resources. And let's have a look and see actually how much that is using. So I'm doing a little bit of light multitasking at the moment. CPU is sitting around 60%. So if I kill that, you see now that that should drop down. Okay, 19%. And here you'll see that your Chrome smooth, no problems. I'm going to load up a website I haven't looked at before, just off the top of my head, BBC. So that loaded up reasonably quick. There's quite a few images in this one. But overall, that performance isn't too bad. So one other test I wanted to do was just quickly test out a couple of HEVC encoded files. I've got the Jellyfish. This is 60 megabits per second, 10-bit. That runs fine because the Apollo Lake supports that codec now natively. So it's decoding it via hardware, not software. And here is a 4K clip now.
at a very heavy 160 megabits per second. You can see there are stutters there, and really that I wouldn't want to watch. Although it seems to be working a little bit better now, a little smoother, but still not perfect. Now I have been monitoring temperatures. I've been testing out some games, and the hottest it's getting up to is 89 degrees on the CPU, and also 89 on the GPU too. So temperatures, they're all right. Ideally I would like a little lower, but it's not triggering any thermal throttling. Now this power limit exceeded, that is normal for this type of chipset. It's always going to be going over the power limit, but it gets up to 13 watts, the whole package. So I'm going to test out some games now, and we'll see what kind of performance we can expect with a little light gaming on the AP42. So first up is Asphalt Extreme on the default settings, 1080p. See, it is handling this just fine. I mean, it's not perfect. Certainly not performing like my NVIDIA 1080 that I have, but I mean, you can do a little bit of light gaming like this. I think isn't going to be a problem with Windows Store games at least. Alright, so this is Dust 2, and it is running at 1024 by 768 resolution, lowest settings. Hopefully we're going to get playable frame rates out of this, but it's not looking too good so far. Alright, so definitely not looking as smooth as the Chewy HI13, which got around 40 frames per second up to 50. You can see already that it's at least getting about 40 at the moment. Seeing some noticeable lag though from the wireless. So the frame rate isn't ideal. I'm seeing quite a few lags and stutters. At least it is scraping over 30 frames per second. But you can see that it's just zapping from one side to the other. I think that must be my ping. Isn't the best. And I still can't kill anyone. Well, I managed to hit him once. So next up, and the last game I'm going to test is League of Legends. I'm going to run it on the lowest visual settings, 1080p, Summoner's Rift, a game against bots. Let's have a look and see how it runs.
These runes are not for eyes such as yours.
So as you can see here, getting over 40 frames per second. It's up to 73 degrees. But I do believe that in 1080p here it is perfectly fine, playable. And if you wanted to increase the frame rate, just lower the resolution down to something like 720p. That would be a little better.
You know nothing.
So I still have League of Legends running there in the background. Let's look back again at the thermals, which I have up here. And you see that it still has not exceeded 89 degrees. No thermal throttling. Perfectly fine. Now I've got my thermal probe here, and I've been monitoring the surface temperatures of the little box itself. And the AP42 is only getting up to 36, 35 degrees the whole time I've been running it, pushing it hard. So that's fine, it's just warm to the touch. So overall, I think this is a real decent mini PC here for approximately 180 US that I picked this up for. There's not really much to dislike about it, apart from one minor thing, that's the upload speeds on the wireless AC should be faster. Not sure what's going on with that. And the other is, of course, you can't expand and amplify your RAM. So if you wanted more than 4 gigabytes of RAM, unfortunately, you can't do that. You'll have to look at the Voyo V1 mini PC with the same chipset. That one, at least you can put more RAM on it. up to 16 gigabytes maximum in theory. Whether it supports it or not, I don't know, but at least 8 gigabytes will work. I've tested it out in that particular model. So this one gets a thumbs up from me. Not bad at all. If you're after passively cooled with wireless built-in, then this is one of the better options out there from the Apollo Lakes. Thanks a lot for watching, and I do hope to catch you back in the channel soon.